start.
Okay. Our project is the Ebola virus, also known as Ebola hemorrhagic, and because it's the Ebola virus, it is a viral disease. Once the virus is actually in you, it starts its life cycle, which starts at stage 1. And beginning, it deploys mechanisms that allow it to either combat the immune system of your body, or to make it completely ignore you, which can make it very hard to get rid of it. And then stage 2, the virus then enters the cell, and okay, got that. Right. In stage 2 of the virus enters the cell, and although it's not known exactly how the virus enters the cell, scientists are becoming much closer to actually finding the exact way that enters the cell, which can lead to it being a much less deadly and have a much higher chance of survival for the people that are infected. And in stage 3, right here, the virus then moves on to replication, where it then takes over the cell in order to, like most viruses, use their replication of RNA to change into their own virus. Okay. In stage 4, after replication, the cell then loses connection to all the other cells, and then the newly synthesized virus, Ebola virus, then starts to try and break out of the cell, and it does that by creating these buds that eventually will burst and then coat the virus in its own in the host cell's membrane, which can make it even harder to detect, which again contributes to how deadly the virus is. And then its natural habitat, and now the exact location and origin, it's unknown, but it is believed to be somewhere in the African region, tropical Africa, and South Africa, somewhere around there. But yeah, the physical structure of the virus appears basically like a long snake or something. It has these long little tendrils or something that can be from 7 to 10 nanometers long, and they use to, I believe, move. Yeah. Okay, that's that. Now, the infection occurs through direct contact, such as through bodily fluids, things like needles and syringes, or even through fruit bats taking a bite out of you, or primates biting again. And those most likely to develop disease are travelers that travel to the tropical areas in Africa or South Africa because of their primates that are there, which increase the likelihood. And that also goes to the biogeography, which again, South Africa has primates, yada yada. Now, some of the statistics have actually improved over the years. A few years ago, they were between 90% to 95% death rate, and now it dropped drastically to a 60 to 65% death rate. And 2014 to 2015 infection count, as you can see here, there have been over 27,500 cases confirmed. And out of those 27,000 cases, as you can see right here, there have been 11,226 deaths in total.
So whenever a person becomes infected with Ebola, the first symptoms that come from the affliction are very similar in many ways to the flu, as you see listed here. In fact, the symptoms are so similar that one of the main reasons people are chronically infected with Ebola is because the misdiagnosis early on as influenza doesn't allow for proper treatment. Early on, you're going to see things like headaches, sore throat, dehydration, maybe mild sores. Nothing too intense, but as the disease progresses, as it for the most part goes untreated, you're going to see more severe issues: abdominal pain, hemorrhaging, bleeding, and extreme dehydration tends to follow. Given that the disease attacks your blood cells, your liver, and cells within the immune system, your body's ability to notice and respond and correctly place nutrients is unfortunately inhibited. And so as the disease progresses, that's why it's essential that treatment stems mostly from boosting the immune system. So now we're going to discuss treatment, cures, and just the general structure when it comes to recovering from Ebola or not. So first and foremost, testing for Ebola is very difficult within the first week or so. As I mentioned before, the symptoms are very, very similar to influenza, and it's hard to determine without super scrutinization, where Ebola is prominent, these practices are not very common. So it's hard to get proper diagnosis there. But within the first 21 days is the most optimal time for the diagnosis to be found correct, because it is when Ebola is still in the starting stage and can be most easily combated. It's also important whenever you're diagnosing or looking for diagnosis of this disease that you consider the 3 most common points of contact, which is blood or bodily fluids of an infected or dead person, objects that may have been handled by the person, this could be sweat, this is a common method, and infected fruit bats or non-human primates, or of course other humans, are key because, as we mentioned before, tropical areas of Africa do tend to have these kinds of animals. And it's important that you stay, on topic with these, or else misdiagnosis is going to be your #1 inhibitor. Given that there is no actual cure for the Ebola virus, the majority of its riddance stems on boosting the immune system within that short span of time after infection. That way your body can combat it. Given that Ebola replicates so quickly, it's important that the immune system is able to quickly reproduce and continue to reproduce the cells that are being destroyed by Ebola. There's a couple things listed here that are relevant to this. Keeping the person at peak hydration, using electrolytes is key. Giving oxygen artificially, even if the person is capable of taking in any energy saving here, is a really good route to go. Maintaining good blood pressure. Treat other infections that may slip in. Given that Ebola attacks your immune system, you can still become sick otherwise. So treating those infections so they don't harbor you anymore is good. And since there's no cure to antidote, the only assets available to really combat Ebola outside of increasing the body's ability to operate is to make pathogens that attack Ebola's ability to reproduce quickly. They can slow it down using certain proteins, but that's not entirely relevant. Just in closing, for the Ebola virus, it's very deadly, hard to detect, and it has a variety of very common symptoms. But if noticed early in its systems, noticed early in its development, and treated correctly, it can be treated and in a way immunized for the next decade or so.
Hey guys, it's Zach. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I edited it personally. Thanks for watching.